Welcome back. Today we're making this absolutely delightful chocolate raspberry mousse cake. Now we want to start by making our chocolate mousse first because it needs time to chill and set. So I'm adding 2 cups of heavy cream into my mixing bowl here, which I've chilled in the freezer along with my whisk attachment just to help the whipped cream mix up a little faster. To our cream, I'm adding 1/4 cup of powdered sugar and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract along with just a little pinch of salt. I mix this on a medium-high speed for about 2.5 to 3 minutes until the mixture thickens like this, and you can see the texture in the bowl around the whisk attachment. Now to this, we're going to whisk together 1/2 cup of warm water and 1/2 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. I use some dark cocoa here, and then I'm adding in 1 cup of good quality melted dark chocolate. I whisk this together until it's smooth, and then I add it into our whipped cream, and I'm just going to slowly fold this together. The goal is to incorporate all that delicious chocolateness into your whipped cream without deflating it too much. You want it to have that really delicious airy texture that we all know and love and expect from a mousse. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap and pop it in the fridge for at least 2 hours, or you can make it up to 2 days in advance. While that chills, I'm going to work on my chocolate cake layers. So I'm whisking together my dry ingredients here. This includes all-purpose flour, granulated sugar, dark baking cocoa, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. I decided to sift this just because I saw some chunks of cocoa powder that I really wanted to make sure got broken up, but you can also just whisk together if you don't have a sifter. Next, we're mixing together our wet ingredients, which includes warm water, buttermilk, vegetable oil, 2 large eggs, and 1 large egg white, along with a little bit of vanilla extract. Once those are combined, we're pouring them into our dry ingredients, and we're going to whisk by hand and mix just until the batter is nice and smooth like this. You don't want to overmix it. You're really just trying to make sure you can't see any more visible streaks of flour and cocoa. 1 batch of batter makes enough for 4 8-inch cake layers here, and I've greased them and lined them with parchment paper to make the layers pop out super easily. As our cake layers cool, we're going to work on our chocolate buttercream. So here I'm mixing my butter just on a medium speed until it's nice and smooth, just like this. Then we're going to add in our vanilla extract and a little bit of salt. I like to give that just a quick little mix with my mixer on a low speed. You don't want to mix too fast or else that vanilla extract can fly out of your bowl, which is not what we want. And then I'm going to mix in my baking cocoa. So here I'm using dark baking cocoa just because I want this frosting to be really decadent and really rich with flavor. But you can also use regular unsweetened baking cocoa or natural baking cocoa if that's what you have on hand. So essentially now we have made chocolate butter, and so it's time to incorporate our powdered sugar and start to sweeten this up. So I'm very gradually adding my powdered sugar here and mixing on a low speed, just slowly incorporating it so that I don't get any giant powdered sugar clouds in my kitchen. Halfway through, I also like to add in my heavy cream. You can also use heavy whipping cream or whole milk if that's all that you have on hand. And once that has come together, it's time to add in our melted and cooled dark chocolate. You want to make sure that you give your melted chocolate at least 10 minutes to cool down, or else it can melt the butter in your frosting and make it seem way too thin and hard to work with. Now that our frosting is all ready to go, the last thing we have to do before we assemble this cake is just to level our cake layers. I'm using a serrated knife here, and I'm just slowly working my way around the cake. You want to be gentle as you do this and really just let the sharpness of the knife do all the hard work for you. Once your cake layers are leveled, it's finally time to start stacking our cake. I am using a 10-inch grease-proof cake board here, and I'm adding a little bit of buttercream underneath it just to help that first cake layer stick in place. I'm adding some raspberry jam on top of our cake layers, and I'm going to spread this all around. This really just adds that extra little pop of flavor. And I'm using seedless raspberry jam, but you can use regular raspberry jam if that's all you have on hand, or if you like the texture of the seeds. So I'm adding about 1/3 of my chocolate mousse mixture on top of this. I'm just smoothing it out with a large offset spatula, and then I'm pressing just about as many fresh raspberries as I can into that delicious chocolate mousse. Now, as you stack each cake layer in this cake, you want to take a moment, and with your hands flat, you just want to press down on top of the cake layer. Not super hard, you're not trying to make all of that mousse squeeze out between the cake layers, but there can be air that gets trapped between the raspberries and the chocolate mousse, and by pressing it down, you're helping the cake kind of settle into itself, and this can help avoid any bulging sides later down the road once the cake is fully assembled. Another tip is to chill your cake layers before you start assembling this cake. The chocolate mousse is pretty soft because it's really just chocolate whipped cream. It's not stabilized with gelatin or anything like that, mostly just because that's the way I prefer to make it and eat it. But with that in mind, if you chill your cake layers in the freezer for about 20 minutes before you assemble the cake, it really helps everything stay in place and makes the cake so much easier to frost. There's a lot less crumbing, and I highly recommend doing it. I do it with almost all of my cakes, and it really makes such a big difference. So once all of our cake layers are stacked here, I'm using the overhanging chocolate mousse to kind of crumb coat the cake, for lack of a better way to describe that. You don't usually use mousse for that, but I popped the cake into the freezer for about a half hour just to really help it firm up. It's going to be a little bit soft still, so as you add on your chocolate buttercream, you want to have a gentle touch here, and you just want to take your time. So now I'm adding that luscious dark chocolate frosting all around the cake, and I went for a textured look, so I just made some swoops around it with a small offset spatula, and then I used my remaining fresh raspberries just to make a fun little semicircle on top of the cake. And just like that, our chocolate raspberry mousse cake is all ready to go. I couldn't wait to cut in and eat this cake just because I've recently really fallen in love with mousse, and this cake is just everything I love and more in a dessert. If you want to make this cake at home, the recipe is linked in the video description below, or you can Google Chelsweets chocolate raspberry mousse cake. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and until next time, happy baking.